Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. In today's video, you're in for a special treat. I'm going to interview my friend and mentor, Homer Sargent. Make sure you watch to the end for some exciting bonus footage. Hey everybody, how are you doing? My name is Kenya. Welcome to 40 Entrepreneur Drive. This is my channel where I talk about business and entrepreneurship. In a couple of other videos, previous videos, I had mentioned a gentleman's name who I had just befriended. His name is Homer Sargent. He is here with me today as my guest, and if you remember, he is also the author of a book called Real Love, Deep in the Heart of Texas. We've got that book right here just to show you. If you haven't checked it out already, it is on Amazon. This is what it looks like here. I will probably put a link in the description. So make sure you look for that information in the description section below. Again, we're going to do this interview here. I told you guys that I was going to be starting a series on some of my coworkers that have businesses or have entrepreneurship on the mind. Mr. Sargent is one of them, but today we will be focusing on the book. So make sure you give this video a thumbs up, share it with somebody. This is an awesome book, and once you read it, you will want to share it. So let me jump right into the interview so you guys can know my new friend and mentor, Homer Sargent. So Homer, you are a native of Texas. You were born and raised here, correct?
Correct.
And this is the Dallas-Fort Worth area, so you've lived here your whole life?
You're right. My family originates from East Texas, but I was born in Fort Worth and went to a hospital in Arlington, and we journeyed back to East Texas every weekend. So I like to call, as many people do, East Texas down home, but Arlington has been my residence for a significant amount of years.
You told me quite a bit about your story about 2 or 3 weeks ago when we met. So what motivated you to write your story?
Well, you know, the name of the book is Real Love, Deep in the Heart of Texas, and there's a caption below that that says, sometimes you have to fight for it. But I had grown up in Arlington during a period where segregation was the norm. And in the mid-60s, the government made a decision to integrate schools. I was affected by it, as was a lot of the kids. And being unfamiliar with black people and the black culture, there were some problems that occurred in the beginning. And we had a learning curve that was it's a classic love story. In fact, I think it's actually the best love story I've ever heard of, read, or witnessed, and I was a participant in it. But we came from different cultures. We did not get along initially, but eventually we fell in love, and it was a heartwarming, great story in my estimation.
Wow, okay. Now tell me a little bit about the process of writing it. You told me you had a friend of yours that actually helped you write the book, but you started off just telling him the story, like casually, and how did it go from just telling your story to actually thinking you wanted to make a book out of your story?
Well, so many people, I had shared with people over the years, and there's so many people in Arlington that remember the story, and they kept saying, you have got to put this into a book or something. I was encouraged for years, but I was in the business world and didn't have time. But in 2008, we had the infamous October economic collapse, and by 2010, I had closed my businesses and lost a substantial amount of money. And I was really had some time and made a decision to write the book at that time because I wanted to convey to the world. I looked around for movies and you know, to actually see somebody in love the way we were, and I just didn't recognize it. So I wanted people to see what real love was, in my estimation, quote unquote,
is more for you getting your story out, or do you think it has a bigger, wider purpose for other people to learn from it? And if so, what would be that lesson?
You know, I've heard so many people, the reviews on the book, I've heard people say, man, this is really a history book because it tells so much about America. But the significance in the book, I wanted everybody to understand where we've come from as a country, but the love that was exhibited in this relationship, it was so unbelievable in my estimation that I wanted people to know what real love. I wanted other people to not give up on life until they experience maybe something to the effect like what I did. I wanted them to know what real love was, and I didn't want them to settle for anything less than.
Okay, so let's be more specific. The difficulties that you had with your relationship, you are a Caucasian man, and the woman that you married was African American at that time.
Correct.
And that was a huge deal in, this is, you said 1970?
It began in 1971. And we had only integrated a couple of years before. And in fact, in the South, it only become legal to marry black and white a couple of years prior to our.
So it was illegal.
It was illegal.
Not just society giving you a hard
time.
No,
so and when I talk about society giving a hard time, it's beyond almost comprehension today to understand. The cultures were so far. They were so removed from one another and so segregated. It was just, you know, you will have to read the book. I mean, it's just an unbelievable situation that we finally were close enough to start trying to understand each other. And everybody had predicted the race riots that occurred, the fighting that occurred, but nobody, and you know, I think maybe some people say, well, love will come out of it eventually, but I don't think anybody realized how difficult it was going to be, and that was the importance that I relay. That if you want something, you should never give up on it. You should always fight for it. And that's what occurred with us. But it was quite the ordeal. It was unbelievable, the obstacles that we faced.
And you said this is during the time of segregation, so we're talking about physical segregation. We have white areas here, we have black areas here.
You had to cross the railroad track.
So when you went to her area, you still got like a sore thumb, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
And what kind of reaction were you given, like a white man in this black area?
I'll say this, in one part of the book, I said I went from jump out of the fire into the frying pan. And I would leave the Arlington area that I was living in, fight. I would leave violence. I had been threatened over and over. I would leave with my blood literally dripping off of my hands and walk to the black neighborhood. And when I approached that neighborhood, I could see the guys waiting for me on as I crossed the railroad tracks.
So you were threatening
by
which side?
Both sides. By everybody.
Yeah, by both sides.
Everybody in. And I may be jumping ahead, but I'll tell you this. I reached out to anybody that possibly could comfort me, and I went to ministers, and the minister said, well, son, the white bird don't flock with the black bird. And that was ministers.
The spiritual leadership is telling you.
The ones that, as I always said, the Baptists, could have done so much to have helped and I don't mean to pick on any one different denomination, but I was a Baptist and I went to numerous churches where we were not accepted, we left. Yeah, we were shunned. To the point that I don't think people would understand. I couldn't even, when we drove down the Abram Street, For instance, if we were stopped at a stop sign and people next to us were so amazed that they would gawk, their mouths would come open. If we went to a restaurant, everybody in the restaurant would turn and look and stare at us as we sat down.
Were you ever turned away from places?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we were, there would be, sir, we're waiting for your table to be prepared, but then other people were going in front of us, and then we would never be seated. That was all.
See, now that seems like, I'm a 70s baby, I was born in 78, so that seems so far removed from me. Does that seem very far away from you, or does it seem like it just happened? Or has enough time passed for you that you see a difference?
I can, actually, music is such a big thing in my life, but I can actually turn on an oldie but goodie and start daydreaming, and it seems like it actually was yesterday.
Okay, so when it seems like it's yesterday, but you look around and you see there's interracial relationships are just not taboo. Well, not as taboo anymore. So what changes for the positive or for the negative have you seen from the time you had to fight for it to now? It's just...
Well, I will say, if they knew the price that had been paid so that might occur, and yeah, but someone ought to know the story. You should know the truth behind it, because there were...
More appreciation.
Yeah, really. It touches my heart, because in reading the book, if anybody does, there's no other love story quite like it. I really like West Side Story and Romeo and Juliet, but in my estimation, this book and this story are heads and above those two. The sacrifices that were made. We really actually did not think we would survive and live to see the fulfillment, the fruition of this relationship. We actually thought that our demise would occur before we realized that. And we were still willing to partake in the relationship.
That is a definition of real love, knowing that there's a risk, knowing that there could be detriment to your life and health, but still pursuing it. Overall, in Texas, what changes have you seen, either just with relationships or just race relations?
I have seen, obviously there's a world of difference. We don't live in a perfect world, and so I still see racism. I see it from both sides. The cultures have not completely meshed, and I don't know that they ever completely will, but we can always have respect for each other. I see great progress in certain areas. We still have a ways to go, and hopefully we'll be continuing to progress. Racism is so uncalled for, and but I have seen, obviously, it's so much better. So much better. And one thing I wanted to add, I was at a funeral in 1979, and I was the only Caucasian at the funeral. My wife's cousin had passed away, and we were in Dallas, and I was the only white, and two ladies were pointing at me and talking, and my wife was in a position where she could hear them, and I asked her later what they had been pointing at me and saying. And she said, "Oh, Homer, it was beautiful." They said, "See that white man? He made numerous sacrifices in order to fulfill his love for that woman, and to have that love and marriage to her." And she said, they looked at each other and go, and they had to be in their late 70s, early 80s, and they looked at each other and go, "Do you still think there's time for us?" And the other one said, "Time for us?" Yeah, to find real love. And so that was really a motivation in writing the book too, because I wanted everybody to experience. I don't want people to have to go through the pain and the experiences I did, but I do want them to have the opportunity to experience real love, because it is really something to be blessed with.
Homer, why did you feel the need to fight so much? Did you think it would make a difference for yourself, for your relationship, or for other people? Did you think anything would change, or was it just the principle of it?
It was the principle
or maybe it was your personality.
Yeah, well, I had been taught right. In spite of my parents' racist views, they had raised me right. Mm-hmm. And so I knew I wasn't going to let anybody physically distract me from attaining what I wanted, real love. Mm-hmm. So I had no fear in that regard. Now, does that mean I was never scared? No, that doesn't. But it does mean that I never wavered in my quest for real love.
Is there anything that you wish you would have done differently?
Oh God, reaching the age I have, there's so many things that I did a lot of things.
I know when we had talked, you said a lot of violence was just in the mix.
I don't think people would understand how volatile of a time period it was. If you turned on the TV, the Vietnam War was going on, there were riots in Chicago, there were riots at all the major universities in the country. There was just, the change was occurring, and it wasn't happening without friction. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I probably wish wouldn't have happened. I couldn't tell you how it would have occurred without it, though. So I feel very fortunate to be alive and sitting here. In fact, there was, I used to hear when people would come up and go, "You're still alive?" and that kind of went with the territory of this pursuit. And it was hard. It was certainly hard on my wife. And then it made me, it's kind of like going to war and coming home. The scars, I think I was scarred by a lot of things. I couldn't have helped to have been otherwise. I just had to be.
We're exactly what type of scars? Emotional, physical?
Both. Both physical and emotional. The way I react to even today is, people would understand. There was such, in the book, my father made a comment. He was my arch nemesis for so long. But
your father?
Yes, my father. He, in fact, had actually tried to kill me a couple of times. But in the end, it's such a beautiful love story. My father said some things at the end because he had changed. And it was, oh God, so difficult. But he looked at me and said, "Homer, gangs didn't want you to make it in this relationship. Teachers, administrators, parents, black gangs, white gangs, culturally, I wasn't received very warmly in the black community initially, just like in being ran off by the white neighborhood. And my dad looked at me one time and said, "Son, you don't have to fight anymore, you won." And he went, "Homer Sargent won, world 0. And he said, "Because you fought the world." And that to me, it's very true. And it meant so much when my father said that. He said, "You don't have to fight anymore, you've already whipped the world." And my life was actually a fight every day, and sometimes 4 or 5 times a day. It was with constant volatility, very difficult.
And you said he had changed over time. Do you think you were a big influence in that change, or do you think society as a whole was kind of coming around?
Well, my father, what happened, he ran into difficulties in his life, and by that time, he asked me to come over, and I wasn't going without my wife, and so my wife went with us, and she helped nurture him back to health, and she forgave him for all the things that he had done, and that forgiveness, it's such a beautiful love story. This man had done everything he could to keep us apart, and then yet he was at that time sick, and it was my wife and the one he had done so much against that helped nurse him back to health. And it made for there's 4 or 5 different love stories within this love story. Numerous, it's unbelievable. Why it's so unbelievable, you can see God's hand in it all. It wasn't that I was so great, or it was God's hand was so great. I survived because of God. We fulfilled our love in our relationship because of God. And then there was forgiveness that occurred in all different areas. And I know forgiveness is what God would have us to do. It's not something that comes very easy for me. But I know in my spiritual life that forgiveness is something that it's God sent. It's God's hand.
Wow. So in general, your family, how much support and acceptance of your relationship was there? And when it did come around, how long did it take? Or is there still difficulty?
My family was indicative of the rest of the world. They are, it's just like where we are in our racial situation in America today. That's about where we are with my family. My family came around eventually, years and years later. But I will always say there's progress to be made. We're always learning and growing, but it got gradually easier. The 70s were very difficult. The 80s, less difficult. The 90s, even less. But there's things that even occur today that are still painful and reminiscent of yesterday.
And you have children with your wife of that time, so can you tell me about some of the experiences and difficulties they had? Were they aware of the difficulties? Is it just something that you guys teach them?
One of the things, I wanted my children raised with self-esteem, so I raised my kids. I read this somewhere along the line. I wanted to tell my children I loved them every day. And so I made a decision to tell them that I love them and their Father in heaven loved them. And they said that if you tell them daily that they're loved by both their Father on earth and their Father in heaven, they will be raised with self-esteem. They will attain self-esteem. Well, I don't remember the kids having many difficulties. They were very popular at school, very athletic, very successsul.
So they weren't bullied or harassed?
No, that wouldn't. And I had gone through so much, we wouldn't have accepted that. I was way, I was very, I was observant to make sure that didn't happen, but no, that never. I don't ever remember one of the kids coming home. They knew who they were. They were the product of Homer and Cassandra Sargent. And there was never any question about who they were. And
so when the kids came up to ask that age-old question, what are you?
half black and half white.
How did they know how to respond?
They interracial, half black and half white. There wasn't a word. Some of these words that are used commonly today didn't exist. Biracial didn't exist.
That wasn't a thing.
My daughter, were half black and half white. And my kids knew exactly who they were. They were half black and half white, and very proud of both cultures.
Sounds like they were very secure in their identity.
Very secure. I say that. I say that for them, but that was the impression I got. Now, I've never, they always liked who they were. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to take a little slight detour because this interracial relationship is made out of an African-American woman and a Caucasian man. And I'm going to talk about hair real quick. I think a lot of times, like currently with the biracial, interracial, mixed kids, there's that sense of uncomfortableness in their own body because with our hair, which is very important to us, if your mother doesn't know how to take care of it, you kind of grow up feeling not good about yourself because you don't look as good as you could, but with their mother being black and being familiar with kinky, thicker, curlier hair, they probably didn't have to deal with a lot of the uncomfortable awkwardness that some of the biracial kids don't have parents.
When I moved to when my
you know what I'm talking about?
Right? Press hair.
Okay,
yeah.
I mean,
it was something that happened every morning when I moved to the black neighborhood in the as far as the kids getting ready for school. Pressing their hair.
So you got the hair straight.
And no, that really didn't occur. My kids, they were known to have good hair,
But moms still knew how to take care of it.
Oh, sure. They were always groomed very well, and
okay.
I was always proud of my wife, the care that she put into the children and whatnot.
Do you think there is a difference between whether the man is white or black, or whether the woman is black or white? Do you think there is any kind of cultural acceptance or difference depending on which culture?
Obviously I know what you're talking about because you just didn't have. There was some relationships going on. I had heard that were they weren't open relationships. They were hidden, but with black males and white females about the time that we started our relationship. The difference in ours was we were open from the very beginning of the relationship. So, we went to prom together, we went to homecoming events together, we went out to eat together, went to church together. So we were constantly defying society. My father commented one time when he had heard that Cassandra was pregnant with Larissa, he said, "Son, you should walk away from that relationship if you know." And I said, "Well, that's not the way you raised me." And he said, "Make no mistake about it, you won't be the first white man in the state of Texas to father a baby by a black lady. You won't be the first, but you'll be the first to claim it." And that was pretty significant. That's in the book.
That is very significant.
Yeah, he said, "You won't be the first to have produced an interracial baby, but you'll be the first to claim it." And I said, "Well, you shouldn't have raised me so correctly, because I can't not
do the right thing.
Do the right thing." No, they did a good job in that regard. I want to compliment. In spite, they might have wished they hadn't have, but at that time, they might have wished they hadn't have. But they certainly tried to raise their children correctly.
So in general, with your interracial relationship, you were more accepted. We know that both sides gave you a hard time, but you were more accepted by which community at what point in time then versus now?
I would say actually the reverse discrimination that occurred in the black neighborhood was more pronounced. The white reaction was more subtle. Eventually, there was growth, and that's what the book talks about. Growth in relationships, growth in, initially this relationship grew out of a race riot that I was involved in. And then she called to see if I was okay and told me she cared about me. And I had been the one that had led the white side against the black side, but yet I was so impressed by her caring and her concern and her love that I fell in love. And so out of violence and racism grew love. Again, that's why I said you can see God's handprint on all of it. Eventually moved to the black neighborhood, and the resistance was reverse discrimination was incredible. They lined up to fight me and to show their disapproval, but eventually that disapproval changed to acceptance, and I was very much eventually accepted. And I would say I probably had the most resistance in the black neighborhood, but the most acceptance. And eventually, they really let me know that they cared about me and they felt for me. But I had to pass the test. I showed that I was in love, and I was there for the real deal. I had made a commitment, and that's what this book's about. It's about making a commitment and standing by it. Hence, real love, deep in the heart of Texas.
We have been talking to Homer Sargent, who is the author of this book. You guys have only got snippets of the story. There's a lot more that I've been privy to because we've been talking, but if you want to know the whole story, the backstory, you need to read the book here. It is available on Amazon. Again, this is Homer Sargent's Real Love, Deep in the Heart of Texas. If you want to know more about this beautiful love story, make sure you get this book. And if people want to reach out to you and contact you, do you have an email address? Do you have social media? You are on Facebook. Are you on any other social media that people can reach out to you?
Facebook, email, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, I will be putting that information on the screen, so make sure you check that out. And if I can, I will also put a link to that contact information in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, leave your comments, questions in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Thanks very much.